Hey guys, it's f0rest, also known as 944. Don't forget Thorin's YouTube channel.
Right, this is going to be another episode of Reflections, my interview series, and this one is with f0rest. Pretty easy introduction there. Spoiler, I have been chasing this interview for about 15 years, so you know what? Maybe this is like a Moby Dick scenario. Maybe eventually you do get your white whale if you keep going. It's true, actually. People think I'm joking, f0rest. Even when you joined SK, I was immediately just all over you. Like, what about now? Like, but you even did tell me, like, as soon as you joined SK, like, look, it's nothing against you. I just don't like interviews. I'm sorry. It's not my thing, right?
Yeah, that is true. I mean, that was one of the things in my early career, right? I never did interviews. Never. I never did stage presence.
No.
Never did anything PR related at all. But the thing is, with you and me, we never had the chance to talk actually. But I think this is a perfect opportunity to do so.
Yeah, let's do it. Yeah. Mm-hmm. If people don't know, by the way, back then, it also used to be where because media obligations weren't as much, everyone really could cynically just be like, right, who's the in-game leader? It's your job. And then that one guy just did like every interview. That really was how it was back then. That's why exactly. If people don't know, people like cArn and Taz were super famous. They weren't the best players. They were just the one that did every interview. Wait there 1 second. What just happened there?
Yeah, that was my bad.
It's all good. It's all good. Don't worry about it.
Yeah, right. I know. It's like that was a super weird thing, right? Because that was a small part of NMP as well. Because we were f0rest and you had Frag who would do the interviews. You kind of have f0rest being the in-game leader, and as you said, way back as well, you had RobbaN in SK. g.O.A.T was actually one of the newer.
He actually sort of understood back then. He wanted to be famous in a way. It was actually quite a unique quality for a player, wasn't it?
Yeah, definitely. He had a different mindset compared to everyone else, especially me as well. Because I'd never wanted to do anything. You had Al. There was a lot of people who never did interviews. Probably could have been a lot more famous if they did so. 100%. So, yeah, cArn, Taz, good examples. They did everything. Became famous real quick.
Along these lines, then, here's the question I would ask is, I've always got the vibe from you. I mean, it's sort of something I think you've even said in interviews. Basically, I've always felt like people tell you, you're the best, you're the greatest, you're the best ever to play the game, but you're just like, I'm just a guy who just likes the game, like I'm just happen to be good at it. Is that the sort of vibe you're on? It's always felt like it.
Yeah, I mean, I do get proud is not maybe the word, but humbled by like people do consider me being like the greatest, right? That's an opinion they had. But yeah, my mindset has always been like I see myself as a regular guy who just plays Counter-Strike. I just love playing Counter-Strike. I always have, always will. I never really understood the hype. Can't really see myself like being talked in that sense that I am. But I'm super grateful that I am.
Sure. Right, obviously on this interview, because people know so much about your CSGO career, we want to go back to some of the 1.6 days. And I actually have a question, because I've noticed everyone else's interview with f0rest always only starts with that famous story of like, and then the Begrip team won the World Esports Games, because that was just like the famous breakout big tournament. But if people don't know, if you actually were following Swedish Counter-Strike back then, the Sweden always used to have a really healthy LAN scene. And I actually had a tournament I want to ask you about, which is a different one, which is I know that your breakout was the OptiHack tournament. So this was the one where, if people don't know, it was the same players. It was you and Tentpole and RobbaN, these guys that became famous later. But what people forget is this was one of the tournaments where it was won by that cArn mixed team, the Scorpiana, the Schoolboys, which was like at the time was like a big breakout story. Yeah, it was like a cool story. But what people forget is they remember that part. They don't remember you guys were in the final with them. Like that was a big upset. You guys were nobodies. And if people don't know, the teams you were playing back then, there was some real teams there. There was like proper professional teams and Catch Gamer from Norway and stuff. Like, was this like a moment? Was this a breakout moment for you?
Yeah, I think so. I think if I remember correctly, I think we played PSG Pentagram.
The Pentagram is
Pentagram,
yes.
Yeah. We beat Pentagram, Neo, Taz, and the boys, and they were a lot more famous than we were back then. A much better team. We beat them, and as you said, we beat a few more teams. We played in the final. That's where we, as you said, I think that is where the breakout within the Swedish scene and potentially even international, because that's where we faced and beat a lot of good players, and that's also why we got picked up by Begrip after that tournament by Calippo and Iskall, who saw the potential in us. So definitely you're 100% right. I think people do forget that I did play in Embrace, was the name. I had a long journey with Doom as well, attending a lot of smaller LANs. I think one of the few good results we had was beating Was it beaten? No, we were playing Noah. I remember on Dust 2. We lost 16-14 on this LAN, and we were absolutely nobodies. We were like, I was like 13,
Right. Okay.
13 years old or something. It was also a LAN. I don't remember the LANs, what the name was, but we had a lot of LANs back in Sweden. Anyways, yeah, 100% correct. Embrace was actually like the start for my breakout.
Along these lines, then, one thing I want to ask was, I always feel like people who aren't from Sweden don't understand like what the politics of the scene was. Back then, a part of it is either you have to go to a LAN like this, because like you're saying, you get a chance to play real pro teams, so you'll be able to show like on LAN that you're good, or you have to sort of like have a friend who vouches for you and gets you in the right like IRC channel to get in the gathers, to get in the pickups, to play the scrims, right? At this period of time, like, had you already gotten to that point where you were like playing with the top players? Were you getting scrims against real teams?
I mean, at the Embrace point, I would say we were playing against or practicing against solid teams. People were still doubting us a hell of a lot. People were calling us onliners because we haven't really been proven on LAN. There was a lot of, like as I said, it was like a pretty closed group. It was so hard to get into that group of top teams. You had a lot of pro players back in the days in Sweden. There was like maybe 30, 40 players that was like incredible big names in Sweden, and trying to get into that closed environment was hard, and the only way to do so was to prove yourself on LAN. And by doing so, you need to attend these LANs like I think it was called OptiHack, and then
There's loads Rendezvous, Birdie, tons back then. Yeah, it was a whole little circuit.
Yeah, exactly. There was a own little circuit within Sweden, and that was only way to really get acknowledged was breaking through LAN. But yeah, I remember. No, wait a second. My journey actually started a little bit early. My memory is going back to me. So virtual experience online was the first big breakthrough. That was Tentpole, yeah.
There's a similar team, but I think you'd had Vornox instead, right? If people remember, he was like a legendary figure in the scene because he was friends with all top players and stuff.
So virtual experience online was actually the first where I got called in to play on an internet cafe in my hometown with Tentpole.
Oh, right.
You had Legisten, you had Imitation, Cop. Yeah, I can't remember even Carnage. You have a lot of names in that team. That was the first where they actually called me up and they were like, "Hey, you seem like a really good player. But we don't trust you. We don't trust that you can play this good." So they called me down. I roller skated down to the internet cafe, did my tryout on site, and they were very impressed. But that was back in the days when virtual experience live. So you remember that league? It was called
Swedish Esport League, right?
Exactly, where every team needed to play from an internet cafe in Sweden.
Yes,
so
it's quite a clever idea, because what was clever about it was, because it was only in Sweden, obviously the internal internet's amazing, but at the same time it's LAN, because as you're saying, you have to actually be at a LAN cafe and play only from there, so it's sort of like a combination of the two. It's quite an innovative idea, actually.
Yeah, I think actually that at that point in time, I think it was to this day, that is like one of the best things that could have happened to Swedish Counter-Strike in terms of developing players. The funny thing is because it was so spread out in Sweden. You had like the northern part of Sweden, you had the middle part of Sweden. It was like a proper football league, but but not in that closed sense that you couldn't participate in other tournaments. This was something.
Yeah, if people don't know, back then the only people who were Swedish who were pro lived in Gothenburg or Stockholm. There's no, because as you're saying, you had to get into the lands, you had to go to them. Like if you live in where was that place like Valde, Uppsala or something? Where was the place he lived in the north? Like if you live there, you fucked. Like Luleå or whatever. Like, if you live there, you're not going to be a pro. Like this league mattered for that. Like you're saying, it's a way to get known, right?
Yeah, it really was. I think it's a shame that it kind of, I don't know what happened or why it closed down. I think it's because the interest of internet cafes probably wasn't that big anymore. Yeah. It wasn't profiting good enough. But I really enjoyed that idea. That is something that definitely could come back potentially in a bigger market when Counter-Strike Go is keep on growing the way it is.
Sure.
But, yeah, funny times, man. I had a lot of.
Since you mentioned, like as you say, this was in your local area, this VXO team, and you come from Vasby in Sweden, right? So another detail a lot of people do not know, f0rest, is they don't actually know that Tentpole, your teammate from this area, I'm guessing he came from the same area, right? It sounds like you just grew up in the same place.
Yeah, exactly the same place. So he was 3 years older than me. I think we have actually produced a few good talents from my hometown. You had Flusha, who until recently I just realized that we were attending the same school.
Oh,
I
right,
didn't know.
okay.
I didn't know. We were attending the same school when we were kids. Obviously, he's a few years younger than me. We were attending the same school. I lived almost neighbor with him, and I mean, so the hometown has produced a fair share of pro players. But yeah, correct. Tentpole is from the same hometown. I think that's also why we stick together for quite a long time, actually.
Yeah.
That was one of the longer teammates I had then entered G.O.A.T. But I think up till that point, I think Tentpole was the longest
Sure.
member.
Let me ask you about him then, because I actually feel like he's like one of those forgotten players in history, partly because he ended his career in CS 1.6. I actually think off the top of my head, because I was there, I believe the reason he ended, because if you remember he was in SK, was like one of those things where, you know this because you were in SK as well, right? The problem back then, it wasn't that they didn't pay you, it's that basically if a sponsor was late or didn't pay, then they couldn't pay us. So it meant that you just got the lag passed on to people like us. So at the time, the problem was, I think he just got in one of those bad ones where they like, it took 3 months and he was just like, right, fuck this, I'm out. But if you wait, if you know the SK way, if you wait, eventually you get it one day. Like, it just takes a while longer. So anyway, the question is this, right? I want to know, who was this guy as a teammate? Because like I say, I was surprised when I found out he came from the same place. Because, yeah, you played together in this team and then FNATIC. And then the weird thing is, though, the two part ways, because there's that weird storyline where after your team got really good and had won like the CPL, this is what I wanted to ask you about. His official reason was something weird, like, oh, I don't want to be a pro. It's like too much travel, and it's like, you know, it's like not the life for me. But if you remember, I'm not even joking, dude. Something like 2 months later, he was like, I'm just going to join SK, and it's like, but they're the other team that goes everywhere in the world. Like, that must have seemed weird to you guys. Like, what the fuck happened there?
And that happened many times with many different teammates as well. In 1.6, everyone was like, you know what, screw this, I'm out. I don't want to be a pro player anymore. Traveling is too hard. And they quit, and then you realize that they joined you're like the biggest rival against
Exactly.
you, and you're like, what the fuck is this shit, man?
You just played him in like finals all year. It's like, bro, you weren't supposed to be traveling. What the hell?
we could have been with each other, man. Yeah, but I don't know. Yeah, so that was actually one of the reasons. I also think one of the biggest reasons we lost a lot of big names in Swedish Counter-Strike was definitely, like, as I said, if salaries were late, they and a lot of, like, when I was pro at that time, I was very young, right? I was living with my parents. But Tentpole, for example, he already got his own apartment. You had a few other pro players who had their own apartment, and you were barely making like minimum wage in Sweden. Barely. Like the best players earn like minimum wage in Sweden.
Yes.
And some of the lesser, well, not as like big names would earn less, so that you couldn't even cover rent, food, and all that. So especially when the payment was late, they would be late with payments for the apartment. And I think that one was one of the biggest reasons a lot of players dropped out. Yeah.
Yes.
And I think that could also affected Tentpole to like why he quit in the beginning. Like, I don't want to travel as much, and the pay is not as good as like working a normal job in Sweden. But then everyone comes to realize, holy shit, we're actually playing video games for a living. It's actually freaking amazing that we're traveling around the world playing video games. They like realize that the moment they give it up, that's when they.
It's famous, dude. Yeah, you know how many players I know who even told me, although I really did actually start to hate esports, but then I went and did like an office job for 6 months, and about like 2 months in, you're like, shit, I might have made a mistake here. Because even if I thought I hated that other thing, like I was like, you know, on the stage, like people like, here's a medal, you've won. Like, oh, it's a bit. Yeah, exactly. It's only when you're out of it you sort of realize what you had. Yeah, true.
Yeah, I think so.
True.
So I got that experience from the people who like dropped out of Counter-Strike. So I learned like, holy shit, I'm not doing the same mistake. But I think that the payment was not as good, man. I think that's why like you had the players like I can't like really recall, but I think DSN and cArn and everyone also kind of. I don't think it was necessarily like DSN was making money on.
He do poker, right?
Yeah, he did.
Yeah, he's doing some side hustle, right?
Well. Yeah, exactly. So there were a lot of players into poker back in the days, and people just find the income, like a better income, outside of Counter-Strike. So I think a lot of people just like you had this really talented Norwegian player, Real. What's his name, Real?
Yeah, another poker victim, I think.
Yeah, exactly, poker victim. Yeah, he was around the same age as me, I think.
Yeah.
Like also. One of that, like, my generation type player.
I heard he was supposed to play with you guys at one point. I think cArn told me or something like at one point you guys were trying to get him into FNATIC.
That could have been, man. I don't think I was in every single talk at that time.
Fair
because
enough.
there was like a cArn, DSN, and I think Ins were super good friends, even outside of Counter-Strike. And you would have me, and then you would have eventually, like, okay, doesn't matter really, but like DSN, cArn, and Archie.
That was
and
the sort of
Ins,
the group.
Yeah, exactly. They were like, they were like running the things. But
sorry, listen, I imagine at some point later in the interview that topic might come up again. You know, maybe it influenced the career decision. So let's go back a second, because what I want to ask you before we move on, like, who was Tentpole as a player then? Because I actually thought as a player he was a very unique style of player, right?
Yeah, Tentpole was for me one of the first to really like outthink, and not necessarily his aim. His aim wasn't like the thing that stood out with him. It was like his positioning, his timing, the way he read the game or read the opponents. It was nothing that he could like transition into us. It was more his play style. He was thinking a lot. He was like to
me, he was a bit like Flusher.
A little bit like Flusher, a little bit like Get-Right.
There you go.
Kind of the same players who thinks a lot about a game. They don't necessarily have the greatest aim, but they do damage, and I mean they do a lot of damage at that. He was like, I think he was one of the best players from Sweden, and a lot of people do know him obviously because he did leave a mark, because he was an incredible player. So I think always calm and collected, trying to outsmart your opponents instead of brute forcing, which is kind of more my style of playing Counter-Strike, kind of just guns blazing, you know. Just go. So that was he was a really good teammate. Small anger issues, but then we all back in the days. I think in Counter-Strike, everybody were smashing tables left and right, and mouses being thrown.
Dude, I remember that clip. Do you remember this? It was on Frag, where after a game where you wrecked SK, Spawn was like, "I want to fucking break f0rest's finger" or something. Like it was like some famous line. You had that one where you threw that bottle into someone's face. Remember that? It was that like Archie or something. You threw the bottle in his face.
Yeah, Archie threw a bottle.
Oh, he threw it at you. That's even worse, because it wasn't like you were like looking at the monitor or something. It just came in your face.
And we actually won the game. That was made me so frustrated, man. It was like we won a game and a ball comes thrown like into my eye. Really,
as though you'd lost or something. Yeah.
We won the game and I get a ball thrown into my eye, and I just go full tilt, man, because I can't put that into my mind that, like, why were you throwing a bottle? We were winning the game. Why are you throwing a ball at me for? So then I gotta go full rage, but I smashed the chair, and this is like a lot of rage back in the days in Counter-Strike. But there was also more, like, Counter-Strike back in the days were a lot more vocal. I think Apex from Vitality is very vocal player, but that used to be standard, man. That was not just one player from a team. Everybody was shouting. Everybody was trying to trigger each other. You tried to get under people's skin all the time, even like pre-game, during the game, during warm-up, like every single scenario. You tried to psych out your opponent. And I think that was one of the glorious days of Counter-Strike as well, where you would feel like emotions would come through, like emotions you didn't think you could have, like frustration, anger. You would feel anger against opponents. But the moment the game is done, not even when the game was done, you could let go of the emotions sometimes, because sometimes they really got under your skin. So the competitiveness was a lot more fun in a sense than what it is today. Now it's a lot of friendly.
I know what you mean, because here's the problem with that. It's like, here's the difference, mate. That's the effect of cameras as well. You know what I mean? Because a lot of what you're talking about, like, some of it might have been like photographed, but like it was more like it was in the game was what people cared about. Whereas now the problem is, because it's all filmed and everything's in a documentary and a big ESL camera, like everyone now has to just be best friends after the game, don't they? They have to sort thank you, great to play. Whereas actually, like, mate, if people don't remember, like, the thing I'm thinking of is, like, remember after that World Cyber Games where not only did you lost, but then like fucking Lord just like right in Get-Right's face, like trying to fight him almost after the game, like exactly. Like, dude, it was some of the rivalries back then were real. Like, they weren't for the cameras at all. They were heated, right?
Yeah, they were heated. I mean, there were arguments and fights happening after tournaments, being between players and teams.
Yeah.
Real fights. It was just like, but in a sense, I think also that's why you see. I think you can see a lot more emotions being shown in 1.6 in tournaments. Like the famous clip from Taz when he calls his parent, like, I think his family.
Yes, after they beat you in that IM game,
you see Get-Right on the floor. Everyone is just totally devastated because it was like a gritty environment to be in. You had like the fans right next to you, like,
it was wild,
breathing you down the neck. And I think there was something more. You were more naked in a sense as an individual as well in that environment. Now you're more protected in the stage thing, and as you said, more cameras perhaps, and so everybody's a little bit more shielded in a sense.
Right, here's the thing. I do want to address that first year in the Begrip team, but I don't want to spend too much time on it, obviously, because we don't want to like make half the interview about that, and then the rest is like the next 15 years or whatever. So the brief topic I have is this, because it's an angle I haven't heard people talk about before. So first of all, one thing people don't seem to know is that the WEG tournament you won, what was weird about that was, because it was in Korea and you had to go there for like a month or 2 months or something, actually all the top teams didn't attend these events. Like it was always a mixed bag. Like you had like a few sort of good teams, like, or like you'd have like a good team, but they had a stand-in. It was always a weird setup like that. So one thing that people might not know is, even though it was like a big breakout for you guys to win, I actually know that particular tournament was one of the ones where a lot of the teams felt like who the fuck knows who's going to win these? Like, because no one's ever played in that environment. Like every tournament before that's like 3 days in one place, and it's a LAN. Like this is like you're in this TV studio, and then you come back next week. But it's almost like Premier League or something, mate. And by the way, that alone was ruining half the teams because, like you said about the arguments, mate. Like people just getting people to hold it together for a 3-day LAN's normally hard. Try getting some of those teams for a month to live with each other and then play the games. Like you can imagine, it's a very different environment. So on the one hand, you were going to South Korea from Sweden, and then at the end of the year, you were going to America for the CPL. So like nowadays, people will take this for granted for us, but back then, I'm guessing this was like a fucking really eye-opening year for you.
Yeah, it was. It really was. I took a gamble. That was the year I really went and decided that I want to like gamble everything on Counter-Strike, because when Begrip asked me, and in that same, like when they asked me to, or when they asked our trio from Embrace to join Tentpole and RobbaN with me, join Calippo and Iskall in Begrip. At the same note, we got invited to WEG in South Korea, and I just said to my parents, it's going to be like a 2 months. I'm going to be away 2 months. I can't go to or participate in school. I want to drop out. I dropped out of school, went to South Korea, and I had no idea what I was getting into, because it was my first international tournament. I never participated in anything else. I was always been grinding those Swedish lands, as we talked about previously. So this was a big breakthrough. I was like absolutely clueless. First time trying to speak English, trying to, like, the whole thing was just immense, like so much information to take in at once. I was 16 years old, I believe. And on top of that, perform against, at that time, like the biggest names. You had like Noah. Fair enough, they didn't have like the full roster. They had stand-ins, but I mean, the player names at that time were like, it was absolutely insane that I was going to play against these guys. And yeah, we did very good, and I think people got surprised that we could compete at that level. And yeah, sad that the team kind of didn't feel this, like we didn't really do much more with the group. Actually, we went to CPL. That's about it. But that that win really helped me, I think, in that sense that FNATIC then maybe got their eyes on
no
me.
doubt, yeah. By the way, on the CPL topic, the angle on that I would just ask is this. At the time as well, the other angle a lot of fans might not get is, if you're a guy who's just living in Sweden playing small lands, like CPL back then was like the fucking mecca of Counter-Strike, wasn't it? It was like, that's, you remember all the videos of Potty and Heaton and Altspawn and everyone. The joke is, if you're from Sweden, that's almost like, that's how you know you've made it to the top of Counter-Strike, is when you get to that tournament, right?
Yeah, CPL was the most prestige thing you could ever attend, and to win a CPL would be something sort of amazing in that time. At that time, it would have been amazing to win those. So attending one, as I said, that was like, you peaked. Like, this is it, man. You made it, and you are now what everyone strives to be within Counter-Strike. You're attending a CPL. Everybody was even using the CPL GUIs in Counter-Strike. We have the background CPL.
Yes. Yeah, true. Yeah, you're right. I know what you mean. He means like basically you could. There was like a graphical overlay for CS when you set up all your things that they would have to at the LAN. And the joke is, even people who weren't at the tournament, just so they could feel like, oh, I'm a pro. Everyone was putting it on their computer. It's true. That was like the famous like thing to feel like you were cool and laugh.
Exactly. Yeah, but that tournament, but that was a shame because we got. I think in between us winning WEG and attending CPL, I think they had a WEG season 3, I believe it was.
Yeah.
And that's around that time, even Tentpole and I even think Calippo at that time said that they don't want to travel anymore. And imagine we traveled once.
That's the first year. Yeah, exactly.
We traveled one time. And they're like, nah, shit, fuck this shit, I'm done. And I was like, and this was my breakthrough. Right? We won a tournament. I'm feeling hyped. I want to keep on pushing. Like, we're invited. We can like defend our title here. I think me and RobbaN and Eastcall at that time wanted to go, but they were steadfast that no, we don't want to go. And then it was like kind of shady. Like, okay, what are we gonna play? So we didn't really play anything. And then we're like, okay, let's do one last like hooray with CPL, and that was the end of the team. So it was a weird team in that sense.
You did the original Last Dance. Who knew?
Yeah,
it was actually you guys, the original Last Dance. There you go.
Yeah, so it was super weird. And then, but I think at the same time, after that CPL, I think FNATIC reached out and. Yeah, I think that is.
I've got a quick question before the FNATIC stuff, right? This is a weird one, but one thing that used to be really annoying back in the day, right? Because I was, as you can imagine, I was a super nerd, mate. I used to love all the POV demos and all the things. But what people won't know is every demo and movie wasn't on like one big website. In fact, back then, you watch like Frag movies. Half the time, you had to go and find that person on IRC and be like, "Do you have a link on an FTP?" Because like, there wasn't websites, there wasn't YouTube. So this will sound weird, right? But back in the day, one thing that used to tilt me, dude, was when you would find a Frag movie of a famous player and you were like, oh my god, this is going to be sick, but are you ready? Because you should know where this is going. But then when you download it, you're like, oh, this is before he became famous, because that was what your Frag movie was. Do you remember this? Like, and when I saw this Frag movie, I was thinking it was going to be amazing, but it's when you were like 15 or something, wasn't it? So I remember watching it being like, this is just all right, like, come on, because you're not even like playing against top players or whatever. Like, I'm not hating it, wasn't that great, was it? Like, it was just all right.
Yeah, I know exactly what you mean. Yeah, my first Frag movies were absolutely shit. As I said, was like, I guess.
Because didn't you make it yourself from like when you were a kid or something?
That was my brother who made it.
Oh, there you go.
It was just fooling around, and I was like super.
Yeah, exactly. Like, if people don't realize, it wasn't even from like pro player. Like, half of the clips are on like fucking, I don't know, Prodigy or Aztec or something.
Yeah,
exactly. Yeah.
Random bullshit, man. Just random clips.
Along these lines, though, the question is this: at the time before you joined FNATIC, because you know how people are, dude. Like, it's like, think about Simple now. Everyone now is going to tell you they said Simple would be the best from day one, and then you and Hellraisers or whatever. But like, obviously, they're just saying that because he became the best now. It's easy to see now. At the time, at this point in time, when you get picked up by FNATIC, do you think there was actually like, did other people in the scene know how good you are or what your potential is? Do you think people saw it?
I mean, that it's a tough question because we don't have the platforms as we do now either, the way we can talk or get opinions out of everybody. But no, I mean, I don't believe people thought that I would be that good or become like a good asset. When I joined FNATIC, I still think people were a little bit doubtful, even though we won WEG. Like, not everything reaches everybody. People probably didn't even know that I have won a tournament before joining FNATIC, you know? So no, I don't think the expectations were very high on me when I first started playing FNATIC, no.
Because then the other angle as well is, obviously, from that Begrip team, at the time you played with RobbaN, then you guys, Tentpole and you went off and joined FNATIC, and then RobbaN was in like NIP, and then later obviously SK, and then you reunited in SK years and years later. So like, was he actually someone, were you actually close with him in the Begrip days? Like, was he someone, did he have an offer for FNATIC or something? Was there a reason you had to part ways? What happened to that?
No, yeah, we were super close friends. Me, RobbaN, and Tentpole were really good friends back at those days. But it was just FNATIC reached out, and I think they reached out to Tentpole first, actually, and not even me. And I think actually Tentpole really helped me out there, and like said, he wanted me to join with him.
Right, he was like that was the package deal.
Yeah, package deal. If I remember this correctly, I think actually that is the case, because I think he wanted someone he knew, maybe from the same, as we live in the same town, perhaps that it was also an easier transition for him. So I actually think he helped me out on that. I don't think I was on their radar in the beginning, but when Tentpole said that he wanted to bring me with him, I guess they just went for it, and turned out great.
Sure. Because actually, I wondered what you think, because it's weird, because RobbaN's one of the few people who's still around to this day. Like, obviously, he's coaching phase right now. They're having all this great success. It's funny, because here's the thing, mate. From being in SK with him, I can totally see why he's a coach, because the thing I would say about RobbaN is, he is just like, he's not even pretending, he is just a cool character. Like, he's just the guy he always just seems laid back. Nothing ever seems to get to him.
He is so good. I've always, when people ask me, like, who's the best in him? Like, who's the best Ingolator? I always comes back to RobbaN most of the time. It's not that it was necessarily like this master genius tactical guy. It's just the way he got the team to work. Yeah, how he made everyone like he made everyone feel like how should I put this? I'm losing my words, man. He made everyone really understand that we're a team and got everyone together, everyone on the same page when we were playing in a way that not cArn could, not Exist could. He brought everyone wanted to do this for the team, and I think that was one of his greatest strengths, to be able to get everybody on the same page.
When you came to this FNATIC team, obviously this is a key moment in your career. So many things were accomplished here. So give me some thoughts on some of these players. Like, let's start with DSN, because I think one thing, dude, that history has really forgotten is I always give this analogy, right, where I always say in CSGO, what impressed me so much was that I felt like Neo and Taz did a move a bit like what DSN and cArn did at the end of your time with them in FNATIC. They sort of like accepted, like, we're going to sort of become the role players, the support players, the background cast, so that these stars can succeed. And I always thought, as a result, though, unfortunately, DSN particularly, people won't know before he did that how good he was, how good, like, what a mega opera he was, and what a good LAN player and stuff. Like, when he was actually like at the beginning of this team, he was one of the best players, right?
Yeah, he was like the best player out of opera out of Sweden, right? Even in FNATIC, when he was playing with Spawn's brother, what's it called, Megaton, I think.
Yeah,
Megaton or something. Yeah, when he was playing there, he was just destroying. He was destroying when he was playing Counter-Strike with Op. He was definitely a star player. One of like the greatest opera who came out of Sweden. You had Wally and you had DSN, you had a few others, but DSN definitely stood out as well. Together with Wally, I would say, as the two best operas. But yeah, he was like, so I was super nervous actually joining this team, because now we join. When I played in the Begrip, yeah, sure, Calippo, he was a known player. Iskal, yeah, he had a stint in Eyeballers. Yeah, they were pro players, man, but they weren't like the big names in Swedish Counter-Strike. They were names, yes, but they weren't the big dudes, man. cArn and DSN were like more like superstars. It felt like both of them. cArn not so much, but DSN definitely was a superstar. I think cArn even stopped playing Counter-Strike at this time. He actually joined in the same time I did, because he was working at some what is it called, petrol station, or what is it called, like gas station.
Yeah,
gas station. So he came back in the same time. But DSM, yeah, I was nervous, man. These were big names.
I can't conceive, because especially if you know the Nordic gas stations, I can't conceive of cArn being like, and do you want pickles on the hot dog? Because that's like what it's like if you go on those in it. I know.
I
guess it happened once.
Yeah.
What about in this? Obviously, we're going to talk a bit later, because there's a reason why, like I alluded to. But just give me the basics initially. Like, when you first met cArn, because here's the premise, right? People might not know this, but if people are old school fans, they'll know that, like, famously, me and Lurpus were sort of like against cArn in some way. But then we did that podcast together, and now we're like some sort of like, maybe we're like friends or like frenemies or whatever the fuck you call it, you know. So back then, basically, like, people are going to think I'm going to diss him, but like, what I want to ask is this: like, what was it like initially to meet cArn? Because here's the problem: is if he wants to be charming, he can be very charming, but he can also be somewhere he can be really standoffish, or you could definitely take like a bad perspective on him. So he's even though now he might be really good in interviews, he can be a tricky person to deal with. So what was it like the early times with cArn? Is he controlling IGL? Do you have to do everything his way? What's he like?
Nah, yeah, he was definitely a bit more. He was controlling, yes. He wanted things to be in a certain way. Him and DSN actually working really. As I said, they became like these the top of this team, right? They were like, all the decisions went through these guys, felt like. But yeah, they were quite controlling, but not to an extent where it was like impossible to make that you can still make your place. You can still call, like,
right,
help out with the team. He will still listen to whatever input you had. So in that sense, yeah. But they were for me. It was so weird, because I've never been the smartest, man. I gotta tell you, I'm still not the smartest. But when I met these guys, they were on a whole different level. I was still young. These were DSN, especially cArn as well. They were well traversed, like the travel. They're grown up at this point. Zen is the superstar. He's playing poker. They have like this whole different vibe.
Seems like they had kind of a professional mindset too, right? They were like more so than other players. They were trying to be pros, right?
Exactly. They were acting like superstars. They were acting like superstars. Yeah, 100%. And so I was a little bit like scared. You know, they were talking like super well mannered. They're using fancy words. I had no fucking clue what they were saying half of the time. You know, so they had this thing going on, but that was. So I never really got like super close with them in that sense that we became like friends that would talk after Counter-Strike was done, you know.
So it was a bit more professional. It's sort of like you play the match, you go home or whatever, or go to your room or something.
Of course we would like hang out. It was nothing. It was more like we would never get like into deep conversation with each other. I think it was all everything was always kind of shallow in the way we were hanging out. We had a lot of good times, but I can't like.
I mean, along those lines, one thing I would ask about that is that it seems like actually that's something for you personally. This team also brought you a bit out of your shell, right? You got to go to some of the after parties. That's another thing people like cArn always wanted to do. They always thought like if you win, you should celebrate and stuff, right?
Yeah,
so it seems like it brought you out of your shell a bit, right?
They definitely shaped me as an individual for sure. Like the way they were acting, it kind of influenced me as well. Kind of to realize how you socialize a little bit more, and as I said, they pulled me out into after parties. They wanted to party all the time after tournaments. You know, you win a tournament, you party hard, man. They party hard. It was just overall a really good time. It was more like so that they are still talking 100%, right? Like till this day, like, I'm 100% certain the cArn and
I'm pretty sure they
are still talking. They're still close friends, right? Sometimes you meet people like that. In this sense, it didn't like work for me. I don't think it worked for Tentpole either. They were like a close knitted group, like where they were just really good friends, and it was hard.
What you're saying, by the way. Yeah, one of the things you're talking about is also like a social phenomenon people might notice, which is the problem when you have a close circle of friends like that. Is part of how you define how close you are in bond is that the other people aren't in the group. Like they don't get if everyone got to be in the group, you can't all be super close friends. So unfortunately, it's why when you have a clique like that, if you get left out, you feel a bit on the outside, sort of like, oh, am I not in the group?
Yeah, I think that's also why I could leave with G.O.A.T so easily.
Right.
Leaving FNATIC to go to SK, which was one of the biggest. Like, why did you leave FNATIC? How can you leave FNATIC?
Oh, don't worry. We'll come back to that. All right. That's a good one. But, I've got a pin in that one. Sorry.
But cArn was definitely controlling, but not in like a mad way. But he was always super friendly and a nice guy all around. Yeah.
Sure. Right, one thing I want to ask you is this, right? If everyone knows the joke, which now in the modern day, the modern version of it's either like Nico or Zimu, and it's like that, you know, the idea that like you just go Nico, go kill, and then he goes and rinses around for you, right? What people don't know is that joke, the original meme is f0rest. The original meme is that's what we used to make fun of cArn with, because look, it's part of it's because he's a very confident guy. So he was always saying like, I'm the best IGL, and we'd be like, your tactic is f0rest, just go kill. Now, obviously, we're being a dickhead to cArn when we say that. We know it's not totally true, but some of it must be true. Like my question to you basically is this. It seems like they did a good job in FNATIC of understanding like your strengths and setting you up, right? You had all the spots and sort of the places to get the frags, right? Am I wrong?
No, I think you're right. That's how I remember it to some extent as well. Not necessarily like they literally said go kill, but it was more like that's more like what I did. A lot of the times is that I actually went and just killed a lot of guys and opened up rounds and set it up. So I think individual skill definitely. The individual skill in that team, or particularly me and maybe perhaps Tentpole, then I got the help from Gooks and G.O.A.T as well, but especially G.O.A.T who elevated. Anyways, yeah. So in some sense, yes, you are correct. I think our tactics wasn't like super advanced in some sense. It was very straight up, set me up to get some good kills in, and I could deliver.
I want to ask you actually, because in your teams, I would say it's also quite similar with some of the guys in the FNATIC CSGO team. They also seem to have a preference for sort of, people call it now loose Counter-Strike. I would say it's more like, essentially, this is why every team can't do this. Essentially, the idea is the individual player has to be capable of making the decisions of what to do correctly, etc. And obviously you have to sort of naturally be able to play off each other. So it's not as simple as people think. But if you can do it, the reason it's obviously mega is if you have star players like you just have freedom, right? You can kind of just do what you need to do in the round. And if people don't know, like this seems to be for most of your career the style of play that a lot of your teams have had, right?
Yeah, it's like, so I am very like my style is I do get set up to a point where, but I will actually start talking like what I want from the team as well at certain points to make things go the way that I have imagined the rounds to go. cArn, do this, and can you spam this wall or do this? Like this will set me up real good. So you take command at certain points, and I think that's why like one of the star riflers today, Nico, I think the way he plays looks pretty much exactly. But I will not gonna say we look exactly the same. I just recognize the way he plays, where I think he's communicating a lot. Not necessarily that he's the in-game leader. It's just that he has this. He's imagining the round, how it's going to play out, and he's trying. So once he gets into a position where he's starting to realize, okay, my imagination can now go into realization. He starts talking. Can I get this from you? Can you do this and this and this? And then you start taking over a little bit mid rounds, and that's when you see players like this pop off really hard, and Nico especially when he goes for that 3-4. When I get 3 or 4 kills in a round, and I could do the same a lot of the times as well, where you are in such a good position and kind of outplayed your opponent in that sense that you have a positional advantage.
One thing about back in the day when you were in your like peak in 1.6 was I actually think another thing people might not realize is if people in the modern day, like on CT side, how players like Hampus and Art do all those like crazy pushes where you never know what angle they're going to like try and flank from or check. You used to be one of the best at that, dude. Like I remember your style was like, even though you're on CT side, it's like you would just push your area until you meet the opponent. And if he can't stop you, if you kill him, you're just going to do it again next round. And it's like, that's really hard to deal with. You can imagine.
Yeah, I am still have that mindset. It just doesn't necessarily.
It's harder to do now, yeah.
But I like that is you. I think you're spot on in the way my playstyle works. I've always been a very arrogant player. I always seen myself as not necessarily everyone agrees, but I see like when I play, I see myself as the best player. I have to think. I think of myself as the best player on the server. So now when I enter a server, I will dominate you. That's what I'm thinking. I will own you. If you're gonna stand on this angle, I'm just gonna eat you up. If you're not there, I'm gonna flank you. And I'm gonna kill everybody. And I'm just gonna keep abusing that. I'm just gonna keep abusing pushes, and I'm gonna take aim duels against you because I feel so much better than you most of the time. Yeah, that didn't work all the time, but it did work one hell of a lot as well. So yeah, that is indeed my like the play style and the way I'm thinking about Counter-Strike is that I'm a very aggressive player, or that was kind of what stood out with me, I guess, back in the days.
Another topic I had on this of like what your game was like, this sounds weird to ask, so I'll try and set it up in a way that makes sense. Basically, right, this will sound like a weird analogy, but you know how in football, if you have a player like, I'll give an example, would be like Zidane, it's like a classic example. One of the things that's weird when you watch them play is you can obviously see the skill and how, like, you know, all the great strengths they have, but one of the other things they have is they almost have like a quality where it doesn't feel like you can ever rush them. They just feel like they're moving at their pace and they do kind of whatever they want. And even though, you know, they might be playing the best players in the world, somehow they're always in control of the game. It looks just smooth, you know, it just doesn't look, nothing's jagged out. I always thought your game had that because there's a lot of people had good aim. There's a lot of people, by the way, even if you remember when the duck jumping came, a lot of people could do it. In fact, most of the people in your team could do it. But yours always just looked so fluid, though. Did you? Are you actually a guy where did you focus on technique? Does it come naturally to you? Because it just seemed like it just seemed easy for you to know when, like, how many bullets to spray, how to do the movement, so you could always get the little extra margins out of the movement and get the headshot and duck out of the way and stuff.
Yeah, I think so. One thing I think people think that I don't like. For some reason, people really think that I didn't like practice or didn't play Counter-Strike. Like the only thing I did, man, was playing Counter-Strike back, like way back. I was like living. I was breathing, eating, living Counter-Strike, man. That was everything I did. So when duck jumping came, we were playing a lot of like. So you would practice with the team, and then late night. I'm talking about like 12 a.m. to like 6, 7 a.m. I was playing hide and seek. I was playing B rushes. I was surfing. So all those combined helped me develop like my moveset, like the way I moved around, and helped me develop so I can transition those fun times. I transitioned into my pro style when we were playing games, you know. So I was just like practicing a lot of different stuff all the time. So yeah, no, I've been practicing for sure. Not necessarily. Okay, sure. People have played harder than me. They practice more. Yeah, for sure. but it's not like I didn't.
I think your problem, dude, is what people have done is this. Because I've obviously probably done it myself in my narratives. They've taken the fact that you played with Get.Right, who is probably the most extreme example ever of the guy. Like I've always told the story. The joke with Get.Right was, if he lost the final, he has to play 2 hours of DM to make up for it. And if he won the final, he gives himself a break and only plays 1 hour of DM. That's like the joke, but like that's almost true. It's kind of how he was. But that's an extreme, obviously. Like the joke is almost no one was practicing like he was. He was a bit of a nutter. But so compared to him, you weren't as much, but you were obviously still a pro, yeah. And the other thing is, the other thing I would say about you is, if people look at your longevity, I feel like you've done a really good job of managing how much you practice though. Like you can't, because here's the thing, if you go like Get.Right 100% all the time, there's very few people can ever manage that. They'd be doing it half the time he played. Like I think you've done a good job of managing, like keeping the love of the game, right? Practicing hard when you need to, having times when you ease off a little bit, right?
Yeah, I think I came to realization very quickly that once it was vacation times or breaks or anything, I would definitely take advantage of that to kind of refresh and refocus for the upcoming season. I think you're on point where, in a way, that people could play like too much at some points, and as I said, they're gonna have an amazing career. Get.Right has like one of the best careers you can have as a counter, accomplish pretty much everything an individual wants to do, almost at the same level as Simple. Simple is about to overtake absolutely everybody in the PTs going, but Get.Right is still going to be remembered. And during that time, no one can touch him, man. But I think, as I said, I think also the careers are going to be so much shorter. But I mean, it's a trade-off.
Yeah, for sure.
I mean, hey, if you're Simple and you're just freaking whacking everybody, if you're Get.Right and you're just dominating #1 spot all around, man, take six years of pro player. I'll take it, man.
Plus, to be fair, back then they weren't giving you like $1 million a year. You know, like, it might have been a different. You know, you might have had a year where you said maybe I'll bonk it down even more. True.
No, but I did play a lot. I still, like in NRP, I still played a lot as well. Almost not lagging behind. Like it was not like super crazy stuff. But I not always in Counter-Strike. I always had a side game. I always played side games. I know back in FNATIC 1.6, people were complaining that I was playing Dota during my free time, and it was like, I was like, what are you doing on free time? I was watching football. Oh, great! So I can't like
exactly.
So
yes.
I can't play Dota, but you can go watch football. You did like always. So because I was playing a different game, I always got like shade thrown at me because I was not dedicated enough. It was just that I love playing games, man. My life has been circling around playing video games. Before I was playing Counter-Strike, I was playing on the NES, I was SNES, I was Sega. I just love playing video games, man.
I feel like there's a world where you could have been like a Dota pro, maybe, right? I feel like you might have been an alternate path you could have gone.
Definitely, I think so. Without sounding too arrogant, yeah, I was a pretty good ranked player back in the days in Dota. That if I would have wanted to pursue that at that time, yeah, I think I could definitely have made it.
What sort of role would you have played though? If you played Dota, what position would you be, and what sort of player would you be?
So I was playing mid.
Of course, come on. So what sort of champion? What hero are you using here? Come on.
Oh no, I can't.
Storm Spirit or something ridiculous. What were you playing back in the day?
Back in the day, like I think it was Nevermore was his name, right? So Shadow Fiend.
Okay.
Was and then I can't even remember all the names anymore, man. It was a long time ago, but yeah, true. I did play quite a bit of Dota, but Dota was not attractive at that time.
If people don't know, those games weren't considered pro games. Like as you say, they were the game you played for fun after you finished practicing CS, right? To let your head down, as it were, right?
Yeah, it really was. But they had a pro scene, but it was not. It was not like the attraction for becoming a pro niche. In that. Yeah, it was very niche, man. It was not looking good. But now, look at it now. Yeah, it turned out great.
Yeah.
At that time, no, it was not a decision. I actually wanted to become a Warcraft 3 player, man. That was like I actually practiced really hard to become a Warcraft 3 player before I break through in Counter-Strike, and I was so glad when at tournaments back in the days, you remember where you would have a Counter-Strike tournament, there were always other tournaments being played. And
it used to be cool, yeah. There used to be Quake or StarCraft or something. Yeah, exactly.
And always hand in hand, it felt like the Warcraft had the same tournament at the same time as Counter-Strike was. So I was living life, man, watching Warcraft 3.
Right.
Yeah, watching Sky and everybody, Spirit Moon and everybody just play. It was so amazing, man. I just love this.
By the way, on this topic though, I've got an angle I want to take here, which is in similar fashion to the fact people think he didn't practice, I also think part of it's because, as we said at the beginning, because he didn't do a lot of interviews, people think, right, that means you're like super shy. Like, I don't know if I totally buy that, dude. Maybe early you were a bit shy. I got the vibe it's more like you think interviews are annoying and you don't want to have to fucking do them, and you don't want to have people asking you annoying questions about shit from years ago and stuff in English. Like, you're good at Counter-Strike, you don't want to have to speak English as well, like. So here's the question, though. I actually think the element that's gone missing, though, dude, is people don't get what you're saying earlier. People don't realise your competitive drive. Like, here's something they wouldn't know, f0rest. You might seem on camera like you're always the super nice guy with a smile. I've seen you when you lose a big game, and especially, by the way, if you think that's a team that you're supposed to beat, or like they won in bullshit fashion, or something like back when people were using the CZ and everything was bullshit, and you're like, what the hell? Like, you're a competitive guy.
Yeah, but 100% I'm competitive. It's just people like to think that like things. People think that I don't care sometimes. It feels like people don't think that I don't care about. Dude, I wouldn't be here if I weren't competitive. I wouldn't sit here today. I wouldn't play those games if I weren't competitive. I wanted to be the best. I still always want to be the best, whatever I do. So losing games, yeah, I've been super angry. We have fights within the team. I've been salty as hell sometimes, man. I'm not always a happy, smiling dude. I can go rage mode. It happens to everybody. I think if you're not raging at some point, I mean, what's the point of playing? If some frustration is gonna get to you. If you lose the game, you know you were supposed to win. That frustration is gonna get to you, 100%. But that's also something you need to learn to deal with and move forward. And that's why we have pro players as well, people who are able to push through that and evolve as an individual. So yeah, 100% competitive. That is 100% true.
Because I always think on that topic, by the way, that's an area where people at different levels of the scene can't have the perspective of someone at a level they haven't been at. Because I'll give you an example. If you were someone who was stuck at the level where, a great tournament for you is like you make the semi-finals once, or like, oh, maybe we beat a big team, they would think naively just winning a couple of tournaments is like, wow, I'd never need anything else. But if you're in the position, like in your career, for example, you've been in a million finals. Like in that scenario, the pressure's even more. Now the pressure is you have to win every final. And if you don't, everyone that you don't win every major, like the Joker's in this interview, in theory, I'm going to have to touch a bunch of them. Like those are painful memories, right? Those are, like, you don't just forget about them because you won some other tournaments. Like the losses count, they stack up, right?
Yeah, they do. Like regarding when you mentioned those major, like I even watch back to like old games now, and I can still be frustrated when I watch the games back in this.
Do you watch back and like hope you're going to win or something? Because I've got that vibe when I'm watching.
Yeah, I do actually. Sometimes
I know what you mean.
I can imagine myself like, yes, I'm gonna get the kills this time. Yeah. I will kill him this time, and I don't. I still don't kill him. I still lose the final, and it still hurts me, man. So yeah, so fucking tragic. Looking back. Anyways, man, I've been thinking like, okay, now we're in that topic. I've been watching like, the DreamHack Winter.
The one against LDLC, I'm guessing.
Yeah, exactly.
The overtime. It's one where you're on championship point in the third map, right?
Exactly.
You were that close. You were that close.
Exactly, on overpass. That's the scenario I think I watched the most.
Oh, that's the one you run back. You want how we could have won.
Yeah, exactly. How we could have won. That's like the one that got away,
Yes.
But a lot of losses do stack up. They still do hurt, but they also form you as a player. I think you learn from those, and I think that's also what was pretty cool with the NIP was that we were able to lose. I think it was 4 major finals.
4, yeah.
4 major finals and still push through on the 5th. I know it's not like, I don't think a lot of teams have that stamina or
no, most would disband or they'd get depressed.
I think so. Of course. I don't think they could have handled the pressure, but I think what it was an amazing thing for us and the team we had was being able to push through the misery of losing not only 1, not only 2, but 4 major finals, and on the 5th one, still being able to put on one hell of a show and actually come through this time. I think that kind of cemented. I'm so glad that we did win one, because I think that also cemented us as a core in NIP that we had that one trophy. But also now we're in the major. They still hurts, man. Especially the Katowice one against the Polish guys. That one,
of course,
was rough. Yeah.
Right, obviously, as you can see, we're jumping around a bit, but I'm kind of keeping the topics together so we can explore them. And go to, so a similar one, right? And even though this is again coming out of like the career a second, because it's on the topic of like confidence. Where do you see yourself? I want to ask you the question that I hinted at earlier. So here's what's weird. I mean, we've even had these conversations in real life. I've even told you this, right? People think I hate f0rest. Just because I actually think Neo was the greatest of all time in 1.6, it's not even a hate angle. And so what happens is, because if the framing is always set up as say why f0rest isn't as good as Neo, then it'll sound like I'm hating on f0rest. But as I would still, like here's what I always say. I think personally it's a preference thing, and it's what style people like or what they value more. I think it's a totally legit conversation in the same way as in football. I think if you think, like, it's one thing if you think Messi's better than Ronaldo, but it's a conversation though. There's at least like a discussion to be had, you know. You got to put all the candidates in the conversation and then you pick from it. So what I would ask you is this, right? This might shock fans, f0rest, but on the one hand, part of me feels like you said earlier, you're confident guy. You do think you're the greatest. You do think you were the best in 1.6, or maybe when you were playing you did. But this might shock a fan, but you yourself have told me there's times you think maybe Neo was the greatest, right?
Yeah, I've said it in interviews as well, that I think he might come out on top of this one, actually. I think he was a very, very complete player in 1.6, and I've never, as we stated earlier, I've never seen myself, like, when I'm playing, yes, I consider myself the best. But outside of the game, I see myself as a nobody still. Or at that time, a nobody. Well, how can I compete with this guy? Like, Neo, what, are you kidding me? How can I get close to this guy? But yeah, I think Neo, he had a longer career in 1.6 than I did. Not that career, like the longevity is always what you go by, but he was successful way earlier 1.6, and he kept that onwards. It was not like he was super good in the beginning and then kind of fell down. He just kept on getting better and better and better and better. That was the thing that was scary with him. I was definitely up there competing with him. There were a lot of players who were really good, but I think definitely me and Neo stood out a bit. But I think I give him that share as well. I think it's also really nice. Like, as you said, it's a discussion. Some people haven't seen the whole of Neo's career. People maybe only watched my games. Didn't really, because it was hard to keep track of everything. Sure. As you said, if you wanted to follow everything, you had to download every single specific demo. You had to watch those demos. It's not as accessible as it is now to look up things. It was kind of like the real super hard to really go by. So if people were following Swedish Counter-Strike, yeah, they would consider me the best. Or if people were fans of FNATIC, yeah, we're the best. But I mean, if we would look at the whole picture, perhaps Neo do come out on top. Yeah.
What about this though? Because the one thing I wonder is, you said it there, like you two stood out. Because I would agree, like if you're going year by year, obviously there's other names like Markov has his years, then way back Zet or whoever. But the difference, or Trace, but the difference is usually they were like 1 or 2 years. At the time, did you actually get a sense during this? Like, I don't know if you've ever seen any of these sports documentaries, like, you know, like Bjorg and Mac and Roll, like they know, like at the time, like we are just the rivals. You sort of get a vibe of like, that is the guy I'm going to be beating in every final. I'm going to have to beat him, or he's going to beat me, or, you know, we're going for the same thing. Did you have a sense at the same time when it was with Neo?
I never really had that sense with Neo, actually. Neo also, I didn't really talk much to Neo back in the days, and I couldn't get a sense of him as a individual. But the one I saw myself as a rival against was definitely Zet. He was the guy who I felt like I need to beat this guy to like become something. So he was like my biggest rival, I would say, because people were always comparing him with me as well. People were saying Zet was better this year than f0rest. And I would be like, hell no, he's not better than me, man. Me and Marcus actually did play Rocket Arena 3 as well, so that was becoming a competition.
Oh yeah, you're also both good in other games as well, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So me and Marcus were playing in the Rocket Arena 3, a mod for Quake, where we would play 1-on-1 against each other, and even those like off-live, where no one even knows about this, but like both of us were super competitive. Okay. We were like angry at each other, you know. We were playing 1-on-1s in Quake, and it was like crazy stuff. So he was like my true rival, but I think in my opinion, but I think that is also because I could talk with him. I could get a feel for an individual who I can like see in front of me as a rival. I couldn't do that with Neo.
He's a very mysterious guy. He was super quiet.
Very mysterious. Also, as you said, also very quiet. Kind of like me in that sense in the beginning. He was also very like relaxed, didn't really care much, not really arrogant. He was just doing his thing. He was having a good time playing Counter-Strike. That's it. But Marcus, he was loud, he was vocal, he was coming at you. He was like a lion, you know. He was hunting you down. He wanted to get you. So that then he kind of forced that rivalry on you, and you kind of accepted that challenge. So I think Seth would be, and Neo was more like you kind of look at him and you give him a head nod and you acknowledge his skill. And yeah, so, but yeah, I would say Seth would be my rival in this sense.
Even though you were very obviously magnanimous and gracious with your answer there, where you said maybe Neo could be the great sir. Put it this way: if I gave you one of those mad scenarios, like like we're in the prime of both of your careers, aliens come to Earth and they're like, right, we're going to play a Counter-Strike match, and if you lose, we just wipe out the whole human race. You would pick yourself as the player, right? You're going to be the one who saves the world, right?
100%, 100%, no doubt in my mind.
Here's the thing I want you to explain, though. Here's what a fan can't understand: is how when you're outside the game, can you be like humble or be like, hey, I don't know if I'm. But what changes when you go in the game? How does it? Why does the mindset change? How can you explain it to a fan? Because like you're saying, when you load in, you do think you're the best, right? You're going to get this kill. You're going to beat this guy. You've got to get this guy now.
Yeah, you're 100% right. But I think it's because like. I know, but it's hard to know how good you are in a sense. I couldn't get a feel for how good I am. It was not like people were throwing around the terms like, oh my God, f0rest, you are the best player. Like people weren't throwing shit around back then.
Yeah, true.
It was hard to get a sense of how good you were. You didn't have stats the same way you do today. You couldn't really see what, like people, it was more like... was so hard to judge how good you were. You had a lot of good players. Yes, Neo. You had Neo. You had Seth. You had me. You had Wally. You had Markov. You had Sonic. You had Trace. There was a lot of players back in the days that could all, like, if you just look at the players and how the way they played, they could all be the best player of Counter-Strike. You had G.O.A.T. G.O.A.T. is arguably the best 1.6 player. If you look at the term, like when he became a pro player. And what he did during his stint as a pro player, I think he's like unmatched. But if we take in consideration what, like, it's a hard discussion, man. It's a super hard discussion. It depends on how you want to look at it. If you want to look at a time span of from when G.O.A.T. became, like, from the years of 2009 up till 2012, I believe it is, G.O.A.T. is hands down the greatest Counter-Strike player ever. But if you look before that, then you're gonna it's gonna be rougher. Then you have me, and then you have Neo. And it's not like I was bad when G.O.A.T. was playing. I was hand in hand with him as well. Yeah. So it's like not hand in hand. I was exaggerating a little bit. I was a little bit further down, but it was really good.
You were there. You're in the room.
But it's a hard discussion. But I can't explain how it works. Yes, I am humble. I acknowledge Neo. I can see what he has done as an individual. I think he might had a rougher time carrying, perhaps. I was surrounded eventually by G.O.A.T, by the means of G.O.A.T, but he also had a really good team. I mean, it's hard. I don't know why my phone took a picture there, whatever.
It's all good.
But it's like, I think I would give it to him in that sense that I think he, not only has he been a solid player throughout 1.6. I think he did it way earlier than me, and he was very successful then. So he had a longer career of being like one of the best players during the whole stint of 1.6. I came in a little bit later. I think that's the only advantage I can give him, that I came in later. If I would have played in the same time span as him, I think I would have come out on top. But like seeing that, what he did before I become a pro player, and he actually, not like he was, as I said earlier, it was not like he was starting on top and then fell down as the year went by. It was like he was on top, and then we just kept on rising until he like took over the scene. And so he was doing this. I was still a noob, and then I joined in here, and then I became, and then we go like on the same time span. So I think we were neck and neck when I started playing, but I would give him the upper hand because he played longer in that sense.
There we go. This video was kindly supported by Kill Your Inner Loser, Ahmed Hadju, Matt Pugnaccio Racula, Paul Villa, Travis Goff, Adam Oaks, Animosity, Bot Pounder 420, Hades, Jensen Go, Kovacevic, Pacey, Tobias Bernasconi, Tosh, Toucan, and as always, special thanks goes out to Jerky's Minion. Do you want to suggest a topic or a guest for my shows? Would you like to ask a question in my Patreon AMA? Maybe you want teasers, find out who the next Reflections guests are or upcoming talk show guests. Do you want to take part in one of those long donator discussions with me? Well, if any of the above or more sound interesting to you, put your money where your mouth is. Join the Illuminati today via the Patreon link in the description box below.